Hey everybody, winter is coming and snow has returned. That's right, I'm back, and with me I bring a comprehensive guide to shopping in Guns of Boom, post-balance changes of course. Now, I know a lot of people are unhappy with the balance changes because of all the shotgun nerfs, but honestly I think it was a long time coming because the shotguns were just so strong to the point where everyone was using them and really just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. However, I do think that the porcupine needs to be nerfed along with all the other ones because right now it's just way too powerful, and there's no other shotguns that can really stand up to it. I've been saying it needs a nerf long before the balance changes, but I think it's more relevant now than it ever has been before. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Let's get into the main topic of this video, which is what you should be spending your money on whether you're a new player or a veteran. So, for new players, you're going to want to start saving gold right away, assuming you don't want to drop $50 to compete in the later stages of the game. Every purchase you make is important because there's not very much wiggle room between leveling up and earning cash, especially since the quest system update, where they got rid of the gold quests, or most of them anyway. In other words, wasting money on a gun you won't use much will put you at a huge disadvantage later on. So to start off, I'd recommend using your gold in the beginning to buy a pair of Panther pants, because they're just really useful throughout the entire game and one of the only valid options after level 34, unless of course you want to use Space Marine. But Space Marine perk only lasts for 3 seconds, and it is super annoying to face them, but 3 seconds compared to constantly having increased speed, I don't know, I think most people pick the Panther pants because they like the constantly having that over just having 3 seconds of basically invulnerability. So I'd recommend the Panther pants, but you do you. Anyway, after that, I just save your gold for upgrades and not buy any gold guns at the beginning because most of them will end up not being very useful later on. And I'd also recommend buying the Fumigator helmet because it'll let you regen your health more, and so that you don't have to use health packs. Because when you're in the early game, at least I ran out of health packs frequently because I was using them so much. So the Fumigator makes it so you don't have to use them, and it helps you stay alive longer. The Darkstalker is good for later game because it allows you to do more damage, but it requires more skill to use because you have to aim for their head, which is a lot smaller target than their body. And so for beginners, I usually recommend the Fumigator, just because it doesn't really require any skill to use. And also, make sure that you're upgrading your jacket, because in the beginning it might not seem like much, just like 100 hit points or whatever, but by the end, it'll effectively double your health bar, and so it's definitely worth it to continuously upgrade it, because it'll keep you alive a lot longer. Now, as for weapons, I'm going to go through them all and say which ones I think are worth investing in. So, to start off with, I'd recommend buying the Guillotine Assault Rifle, because it'll train you to get headshots because of its perk, which increases headshot damage. So that's good, and it'll train you for later game. And it'll also... it does a lot of damage, even more than the Sting, especially since the Sting just got nerfed. And it's just a good budget gun overall. So I'd recommend getting that and then upgrading it to level 3. Most of my upgrade recommendations are up to the point where you have to spend gold. So see, like level 4, you'd have to spend gold. So I'd recommend not spending any gold early on in the game because you need it for later on. Okay, so I'd recommend getting the Guillotine, and then I'd also recommend buying the Death Dealer shotgun, because that just does a lot of damage and it's just great value early on in the game. And I'd also recommend upgrading that to level 3, because that's also pretty much 3 is usually the cutoff point of where you can upgrade it just spending gun bucks. So I definitely recommend doing that because it's great value for what you get. And using those 2 guns and a bit of skill, you'll be able to succeed until you have enough money to buy a better gun. So I'd recommend saving up for the Onslaught shotgun, which is right here, and upgrading that to 5 stars, because the Onslaught is one of the few shotguns that wasn't directly nerfed, and in my opinion it's the strongest shotgun you can get with gun bucks at the moment. And the reason I say that is because it can deal more damage per shot than a porcupine if you play it correctly. because its perk will actually allow you, it increases the damage the more shots you fire at somebody. And so that means that if you're shooting somebody continuously, then the first shot will do 800 damage, and then the second shot will do 1500 damage, and the third shot will do 2300, and I think it just stays at 2300 after that point. So if you're continually firing at people, it's essentially basically just Yep, exactly. It's just a porcupine with a slower fire rate, kind of ish. I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. So I'd recommend getting that. And as for assault, if you have enough gold saved up, I definitely recommend buying the destroyer. It's basically like a juggernaut, only not as good, I guess. I mean, it's still really good. It's definitely the best assault rifle besides the juggernaut. And it has the perk of where the further you are away from somebody, the more damage you'll do, which is the same as the juggernaut. And it's actually also really good on iOS because the Force Touch allows you to zoom in through the sights, which really just makes it a lot easier to use assault rifles, especially when you're like running and gunning on the fly. You can just zoom in and pick someone off and then keep going. And if you don't want to do that, then I'd recommend either buying the Mamba or the Scattershot. And they each have their ups and downs. I mean, the Mamba has a good fire rate, good damage, but it doesn't have a scope. And I would never buy this gun because I use my scope a lot on my assault rifle. It's just really helpful for me to use my scope because it lets you shoot and run at the same time. But if you're not somebody who uses their scope a lot, I'd recommend buying the Mamba. And if you are, then I would recommend buying the Scattershot because it does have a scope and it has it's even faster firing than the Mamba, I believe. And it has not as good of damage and not as good of range, but it's still a really powerful gun. And so if you're looking for a gunbucks assault rifle, I'd recommend either the Scattershot or the Mamba. And if you do buy a gunbucks assault rifle, then that means that you can have gold saved up to buy a shotgun. And so I'd recommend buying the Ranger. And I know it got nerfed, and a lot of people are like, oh, the Ranger sucks now, blah, blah, blah. But it's still a decent shotgun for the price. And it can't really compete with porcupines anymore unless you get the first shot in. But I'd recommend buying that if you're set on you spending gold on a shotgun. I wouldn't do it, but if you want to, that's what I would buy. I would not buy the Cerberus because the upgrades cost so much that the amount that you're spending, I think it's like 2,500 or something roughly. At that point, I'd just save up to buy the Porcupine, which I think right when you turn level 34, it's 2,800. I think that's the way the sales are working now. It used to be 2,800 all the time, but I'm not actually sure about that. If someone can leave in the comments below and let me know, that would be great. Anyway, yeah, so I wouldn't recommend buying the Cerberus. It's just too much money. And then, yeah, I wouldn't actually recommend spending gold at all on a shotgun. I'd recommend the first the first option, I guess, I showed you guys, which would be the Onslaught and the Destroyer assault rifle. And you've probably noticed I haven't been talking about snipers, machine guns, pistols, or knives yet. And that's because, honestly, I wouldn't buy any of these until I have my endgame shotgun and assault rifle. Because the shotguns and assault rifles are really the main weapons you're going to be using. And everything else is just extras. At least that's the way I play. Everyone has their own styles, so I guess for rifles, after I already have my shotgun and assault rifle endgame, then I would probably buy the Scout, because not only does it give you increased run speed, but it's also decent at picking people off from a distance. It has a range of 40, which is pretty far for a sniper, and it has a really fast fire rate and no lock-on timer, so if there's a lower health enemy far away, you can pick them off really easily. Whereas something like the Thanatos, if you miss them on the first shot, then you have to reload and then try and shoot again. Whereas the Scout, it shoots so fast, you're pretty much guaranteed to hit them at least once. So if you don't have as good of aim, or you just want to use it for running, I'd recommend the Scout. If you're more of a dedicated sniper, I would recommend going for the Iceberg, because it has a decent damage output, and it also has the freezing effect, which slows people down and makes it so they can't get to cover as fast, so you can usually get at least another shot into them before they make it. And so I'd recommend that if you're really into sniping. If not, go for the Scout. And let's say you want like a really good gold sniper, so that would mean that you would have to buy the Onslaught shotgun and the Mamba or Scattershot Assault, because you're only going to have enough gold saved up to buy one gold weapon by the end game. And so if you are more of an opportunistic sniper, I would go for the Thanatos. So if you aren't like a hardcore sniper dedicated, and you only snipe when you see someone in the distance, and then you're like, oh, I can pick him off, so you pull out your sniper and shoot him, I'd go for the Thanatos, because it only has 6 shots, but it deals the most damage per shot in the game at 4,580, I believe. And so that's the way I play, and I really love this gun. It's probably my favorite gun, or one of my favorite guns in the game. So I definitely recommend that, unless you're like a super dedicated sniper, that's all you do is sniping. Then if you really want to spend gold, the only really good option is the Liquidator. It deals like 1300 body shot, or I think 1580 headshot, and then it does 1300 5 seconds later with the living bomb effect. And maybe you're not super good at headshots, but you want to snipe still, then I'd go for the Liquidator. I know it's a lot of money, or gold, but that's really the only option if you really, really want to have a gold dedicated sniper. But I wouldn't recommend it. I'd go for the Thanatos, because it's cheaper, and in my opinion, it's a better gun. And then, as for machine guns, they're mainly just for camping and holding position, due to their movement and aiming restrictions, because whenever you move, the crosshairs expand and makes it harder to shoot, unless... Actually, I guess that's not true, because... Or, I think they changed it, but the Hurricane used to have the crosshairs move in whenever you were targeting someone, but I don't know. I just don't really like them, because it slows you down, and it's harder to aim, and I like to run around a lot. But for those people who do like camping, if you want a good gun to start, the Hurricane is a good way to go, because it did get nerfed, but it's still really strong in the lower end of the game, and it restores health, which is super nice. I wouldn't recommend spending any gold on it, though, because you're going to need that gold later on, and the Hurricane won't be able to compete now that they nerfed it. And if you want a better gunbucks machine gun, I would go for the Jack Frost, because it deals quite a bit of damage per shot, and it has a large magazine, it has a large range, and it freezes people so that it takes them longer to get to cover, just like the Iceberg rifle. So I definitely recommend that one. And if you want to spend gold on a machine gun, which I wouldn't do if I'm free to play, but then again, that's just my play style. If you like to camp a lot and want to spend gold on a machine gun, I would go for the Pain. It did get nerfed again, but it's still super strong, especially if your teammates are using freezing or burning stuff. It's just really strong, probably the strongest machine gun even after it did get nerfed, and you'll just melt people with it. So if you want to spend gold on a machine gun, get the Pain. But note that if you are free to play, and you save your gold and you play your cards right, you're only going to be able to buy a single gold, like completely gold gun by the end game. And maybe not even then. You might have to wait a little bit, getting destroyed by level 34 people, until you can actually get a fully upgraded, complete gold gun. So you want to choose which one you want carefully. And then after that, I guess, then you can just spend whatever you have left on pistols and knives, because really the only difference between the pistols and the difference between the knives is that the more you spend, the more damage they'll do. So really just yeah, whatever you have left, just spend it on a pistol or a knife, whichever you use more. I don't think that either of them are very useful, really, because you don't use them very much, so don't, like, blow all your money on one, because you're probably not going to use it very much. And then, of course, if you want to drop $100 on the game and buy all of the endgame weapons, then go for it. But I don't think I really need to make a guide about paying to win. Anyway, here's a flowchart summarizing what I said in the video on what to buy and when to buy it. I hope you guys found this video helpful and can use it as a guide on what to buy. Again, this is just what I personally would do, and I'm sure that other people have different opinions, but their opinions are stupid and you should only listen to me. Anyway, thanks for watching and stay frosty.